and she
That's
goes
a different issue
so
with
this
respect.
Is what I am saying,
from what
because if
Faisal
some
was saying.
women, they are not satisfied with the work of Sharia Council, there may be a reason behind it. Mainly they get what they want in the end, and they are very happy, and we can show you a lot of appreciative letters coming from such women.
We're also joined on the line by Neil Addison, who's a barrister in this field. He's an expert in religion and law, runs a website, as well as being an author of the book Religious Discrimination and Hatred Law. Welcome to the programme, Neil.
Good afternoon, thank you.
I understand that you have some sympathy with Baroness Cox's view, and why would that be?
Well, I think that what is being proposed in the bill is in itself difficult to argue with. It's ensuring that if an arbitration is being conducted under the Arbitration Act, then the evidence of all witnesses is treated the same way, and it also ensures that if there is a mediation, that the judge is satisfied that all parties understand what it is that they've agreed to. So it's difficult to argue with it. I do have objections to the idea of a criminal offence relating to claiming jurisdiction, because I can see problems with that.
What kind of problems would you foresee with that?
Well, I can see it's a very difficult charge to prove, because, as I'm sure all your speakers will say, a Sharia tribunal or a Jewish Beth Din or a Catholic matrimonial tribunal does not claim to have legal jurisdiction in the sense of having any jurisdiction under English law. It purely claims to have jurisdiction over religious matters.
And of course, Aina, if I can bring you in, some people are saying that because under Islamic law there may be instances, for example, a woman's witness, you need two compared to one male, that would be viewed discriminatory under English law. It's because of this kind of contradiction that an issue is being made. What would be your response to that?
Well, I want to echo what Neil is saying, that there is nothing extremely controversial in the bill if you read it carefully. The main thing is the emotive response to it, because people don't bother reading the bill, they just react to the headlines, as it were. So if you look at the bill, yes, anyone who's setting up in their own front room and pretending to be a Sharia council shouldn't get the time of day. We shouldn't allow them that kind of standing, because there are very quality Sharia councils around the country to whom people have access. So 5 years imprisonment, perhaps, to somebody who is putting themselves out as having some jurisdiction. Secondly, again, very important point, they're not Sharia courts. We must stop using that word. They're Sharia councils, because there's no such thing as a court. There's no enforcement power of any decision made by Sharia council. You can't be a court and not have enforcement powers. So whatever they give is an advisory capacity. If they give a divorce, a fusk divorce, for example, where there's been ill treatment, that has power only under Islamic law. It doesn't involve English law in any way.
But do some arbitration processes in the end be able to be enforced by English law? Is that not why the arbitration and tribunal process brought in the first place?
Yes, the key thing to understand is the differences. The bill mixes them all up, which is not clear legal thinking. It's very badly drafted, I believe. If you look at the Arbitration Act 1996, it relates to commercial disputes and civil disputes. It doesn't have any jurisdiction in family law. The family judges cannot be set aside. They have to look at any agreement by the wife, for example, on finances. If that is done by consent with the husband because the Sharia council did the mediation between them, it still has to go to a family judge to endorse. Criminal, again, you
so
cannot...
Could you give a specific example? Obviously, it's getting very...
It's getting complicated. Criminal can't be decided by the Sharia council. Family can't be ordered by the Sharia council. They can arbitrate or mediate a solution which is enforced under family law by the judge of the land. Commercial law is the only one in which you can agree. Let's say you and I had a dispute in partnership and we both agreed of our own free will to go to the Sharia council. What is wrong with that? To save costs in the court and acrimony and long delays, everyone should have the right to go to whoever they want. Now, it could be our neighbours have set up an arbitration council. As long as that's verified and following best practice, there's nothing wrong with them doing that because of our true consent. Whatever agreement then is brokered between us can be enforced if I go back on it and I change my mind. I don't agree with what I signed. You can enforce it in a civil court against me. You can't do that in a family law case because you would have had to start the whole civil process from the start.
So I can bring back Neil then. It seems that existing law covers these scenarios anyway, so why have we got this new law being brought in?
Well, right. For a start off, it's a proposal. At the moment, there is no statute which says that arbitration cannot cover criminal or family law. So the proposal is simply to lay it down in statute, so it's beyond doubt. Secondly, part of this bill is dealing with mediation, and I think that this is a crucial point. Mediation can be enforced through the English courts. So the English courts do have a legitimate right to be sure that mediation agreements, which apply a lot in family cases, are done in a way which English law approves of. And the point about a mediation is there is anecdotal evidence, and certainly the Muslim Arbitration Tribunal implies this in its website, that it will do a mediation, apply Sharia law principles, and then ask for that mediation to be enforced by the English courts. And the point about a mediation is it should not involve the application of legal rules. Mediation is asking the parties to reach a mutually agreed solution. So I don't think there's anything in the bill that any properly run Sharia tribunal, Sharia council should disagree with. I agree to some extent that some of the publicity attached to the bill has possibly overemphasized Sharia, but if you read the bill itself, and I disagree with Aina, I think it's quite well drafted, what it's doing is not something I think it's very easy to disagree with.
Well, could I ask you mentioned that there's Jewish courts or Jewish councils similar to the Sharia councils. How will this affect them? Because, for example, some Jewish women do not have a right to ask for divorce under Jewish law. How is that discriminatory practice being addressed, or is this simply being applied to Sharia councils?
First of all, this Act does not apply to purely religious matters. It applies to mediations and arbitrations which are enforced under English law.
So actually, Sharia councils are not even mentioned. This is just about how arbitration and
mediation
is being defined, and yet it's being flagged up in the media, certainly, as relating only to Sharia councils.
Yeah. I accept that point, and I accept that the publicity talks about Sharia, but if you actually read in the bill, Sharia is not mentioned once.
In the bill it may not be, but Baroness Cox herself in her statements refers to experiences of Muslim women, and therefore perhaps it's not surprising, and it would have been well known beforehand that it would be seen in this context.
But I know there's a very important part of the bill which I think is more important than the arbitration. It is that to say that public authorities should be advising people who are in unregistered, unlawful marriages that they should have their marriages registered, because that is a real problem for Muslim women. I mean, I was at a conference recently where the estimates were given that 50%, more than 50% of the women attending one particular Sharia council, their marriages had never been registered in accordance with English law, and therefore they had no legal rights under English law. And that's incredibly harmful to Muslim women in particular. This bill is trying to deal with that problem, and I do think that's important because actually, and I don't think a lot of imams and others realise this, it is actually a criminal offence to perform a marriage ceremony if the marriage is not registered in accordance with the law. And so that is happening every day, and that law is not being enforced.